Now I've created my delegate. I've also got to, in my interface, I've got to create a pointer to my delegate. So I'm going to create an ID which implements add view controller delegate, and I call it delegate. And I've then got to create a property for it, retain ID delegate. It doesn't have a star, an asterisk, because ID is a pointer anyway. So I've now created my delegate, my protocol I should say. Now my home view controller, I'm going to implement that particular protocol. But before I do that, I've got to import the header file which contains that protocol. Import add view controller.h, implement add view controller delegate. And when I go to my implementation file, you'll see, go to the top, I've now got a warning, incomplete implementation, because I've got to implement that particular method. So if you did load user memory warning, let's stick it down here. And it should help me complete it. And if I type it an add item, it's going to complete it for me. And that's just to show how those add items working. Right, so we're getting there. So our next job is we've got to have a prepare for segue method because we need to set the delegate for our second view. Prepare for segue, and then if segue.identifier is equal to string, and then I've got to remind myself what the string was. So I go into my storyboard, I go into my segue, and I find I've called it add item segue, so I'll copy that. Then we're going to do something. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to retrieve a pointer to the destination view controller. So because I've already imported my add view controller via a header file into my other header file, I haven't got to import it again. So I can now say add view controller equals segue dot destination view controller. And now I can say avc dot delegate equals self, which is set in this view as the delegate for our add view controller. So that's all done. So now we're almost there. So in the add view controller now, we've got to call the method, and the logical place is when just before the view gets dismissed. So we can say self dot delegate. It's a method call, so we need to put the square brackets around. Add item, and I'll just pass any old string for the time being. So in theory, that should now fire the delegate method, and it should send some data back. Let's test it. Click on add, click on done, and you see at the bottom in the log, add items being fired. So now we need to pass the right value back. So add item is going to be self dot call it item text field dot text. So I'm going to send back that particular text field, text string. Now I haven't synthesized my delegate and it's complaining about that, so perhaps I ought to do that. That gets rid of the error there. So now we go back to the home view controller and we're going to capture that data and add it to the list. So we know it's worth coming back. NSLog, that will change the previous NSLog, make it a bit clearer. and we're going to add and display the item we've just returned. And then we can test that. Regular testing means you won't have any problems later on. If I click on add, done, nothing's coming back. Let's log add item, item's not coming back. Okay, so let's go back to the controller. That's because, of course, when we tested it, we didn't put anything in the text box, which would help. So click on plus, type in cream, click on done, and you can see it's passed the value back to the next view. Now we've got to add it to the view controller, and then we're almost home and dry to the NS Mutable array, and then we're home and dry. Right. So self dot items add object item, and that's it. As we've added it to the list. And then what we're going to do now, we're going to implement the refresh. So let's just make sure. So at the moment it won't add it to the won't display it at all. We could cheat. Well, cheat. We could say self.text table view reload data, and that will automatically refresh the data when the view goes back. So let's just test that to make sure it's working, and let's see if we can get this working. Right. Click on done, and cream's now added to the list. We'll come back to the refresh controller later on. What we're going to do now, we're going to add those check items to the list. So when you click on one, it checks the item on the list. There's a little tick box next to it. So in the home view controller, if you scroll down a bit, we've got this table view delegate. Did select row at index path. So we're going to delete all this stuff that's in there. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make sure that the data is coming through, that we're getting the right cell. So nslog, we don't care about the section, so we're going to say row and it's going to be index path dot row. So this now, when we click on the cell, it should automatically tell us which row it is. Row 1 at the bottom in the output, row 0. So now we can retrieve a pointer to that particular cell. So UI table view cell equals table view self row at index path dot row, and that's going to return the cell object. So now we can stop. Okay. Self row index path. Sorry, just the index path. I do apologise for that one. Okay, that's it. So now we can start to play with the cells. So what we're going to do, we're going to change. We're going to add a tick. tvc dot accessory. Is it gone? Type. Accessory type equals UI table view accessory check mark. There we are. So now if we run that, we should find that each cell can be checked. There we are. And we need to hide this highlighter, sort of to gradually remove the highlight. So once we've done it, so what we're going to do is we're going to deselect the row as soon as we've checked it. So we can say table view deselect row at index path animated yes, and that will gradually remove the highlight, so you can see where you see where you've clicked, but it disappears again. Let's see how this works. Let's have cream on there as well. You can see it fades away. But we can't remove them at the moment because we need to have an if statement to do that. The final job we're going to do is we're going to have the refresh, the auto refresh. So if we turn to the storyboard and we choose our table view controller, refreshing is disabled, as you can see. So we enable refreshing, and that's going to give us, if we look at our structure, it's going to give us a refresh control. So all we've got to do now in our view did load is create an action for that, an event for that refresh control. And that's what we're going to do. So home view controller.m. Let's get rid of all this stuff. And let's have a go at doing the refresh control. So go to the top, view did load, blah 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 blah, and we're going to add the refresh control to that. So we start off with self.refresh control. Should be there now. Yes. Self.refresh control, add target, and the target is going to be this code, self action function we'll call the method refresh list, and for UI control event, UI control event, is it gone? Value changed. We're at the end of the list. So now we're almost there. We can now add a new function, which is going to be void refresh list, because that's the name we've given it. And the parameter is going to be refresh list. Refresh list. That's going to be UI refresh control, of course it is. UI refresh control. And now we can do our magic. So we'll put a little message in there so we can make sure it's working, a little log message. Make sure the method's being called OK. And then we're going to self.tableview. We're going to reload data. And then we're going to sender, which is our UI refresh control, end refreshing, which will stop the animation from occurring. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change another bit of code down here. I'm going to comment out the reload data when we add the item, so we can test our refresh control. So if I add an item, done. If I pull down, release, it then reloads all the data from the new, from the modified and executable array. So the final step, which I might as well do, is going to be to make sure we can check and uncheck the boxes. So down at the bottom,